One of the things the audience enjoys every time you visit us here is when we talk about certain incidences, right?
Sure.
And there are some things that have happened most recently that I'm interested to hear your reaction relative to law enforcement's role. Now, I understand in some of these major incidents, you've got local law enforcement, you may have sheriff department, you may have alcohol, tobacco, and ATF.
Sure.
You may have the FBI. You
Sure.
have the whole gang comes in there, right?
Sure.
And I would imagine that when the whole gang shows up, it's really the federales. It's the federal bureau that winds up in charge. Is that true usually?
Well, nowadays, the FBI has changed its mission a little bit. It's not as much of a law enforcement entity, so they're focusing a lot on terrorism nowadays.
Okay.
And so everybody has their own realm, and so the law enforcement entities of the jurisdiction will be responsible for the criminal investigation. The federal will be responsible for assistance and or additional federal type implications.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple.
Sure.
There was that horrible incident that happened in Las Vegas where that guy climbed up in the 8th or 9th floor and actually with automatic weapons took out a lot of people.
Yes.
Lots of people, right? So I wanted you to talk about that a bit because quite frankly, Eric, once again as a layman, I'm still waiting to hear the report from the Las Vegas Police Department on what the hell happened out there. They have not issued their report yet, a couple of 3 or 4 months later, number one. Number two, these campus riots that we have. Campus police versus local police, how much do you let it go? I mean, it's sometimes you sit there looking and you're saying to yourself, arrest them, please arrest them, right? And then there's this other thing that's been very, very serious. I'll use the word invasion, perhaps a little hyperbolic, but the invasion of these gangs, principally from deep in South America called M13?
MS-13.
MS-13.
Correct.
I mean, these are violent, brutal people.
Yes.
So give me a little bit of your view on what happened in Las Vegas, what that is, the campus riot situation, and also MS-13.
Well, you definitely bring it all to the table,
Go ahead.
don't you, Jim?
Let's hear it.
Okay, so let's talk about Las Vegas first. First, we have to. My biases are very clear, but I have to take my hat off to the men and women of the law enforcement in that area who,
right.
while citizens who were just trying to enjoy a concert are subject to such ugly violence and hostility. People must remember that at all times, while you're running away, the officers are going to be running towards, and that. I think some of the things that I found so valuable and touching, and I know it's not directly related to your question, if you give me a second, was that concert had a tremendous amount of off-duty military and law enforcement at the concert. It was a country concert.
It was a country concert.
So from LA all the way through, there was a lot of off-duty, and those individuals who pushed their own families away and stayed there while off-duty to handle to give medical treatment and protect young citizens, and some of them were killed while laying over young children and protecting them. So just a reminder to the country that like it, don't like it, agree, don't agree, that when you pick up the phone and call 911, they're coming.
Right.
And that is what they've dedicated their life to. So when you're specifically to your question about the investigation, I will tell you that you're probably not going to see anything for a very long time.
Why, Eric?
The immense, now I don't have any internal knowledge of what's going on there, but I do know that you have to understand the intense amount of work that it goes into processing the scene where so many individuals are killed at the hands of another. One, not only is it analysis of what occurred, prevention of what occurred, making sure there's no terrorism aspect, but each one of those victims deserves the right to have their death investigated individually. And more importantly, in today's day and age, we have to, in law enforcement, be wary about copycats in applications.
Eric, listen, I buy everything you just said. The only thing that I'm not buying personally is that it's like 3 or 4 months later. Let me give you an example. Remember the thing that happened up in Boston, those 2 terrorists? The marathon bombing, right?
Correct.
Within 3 or 4 days, they knew everything about those 2 people, right? Correct. Where they came from, where their families were, what they did, how they did it, blah, blah, blah. So that investigation within a period of 1 week and a little bit longer, but getting those two guys in 2 or 3 days, that reached internationally.
It did.
And they knew exactly what happened. Now,
It did.
I'm not saying that the Las Vegas thing should have been done in 2 or 3 days, but somewhere between 2 or 3 days and 2 or 3 months has got to be the right answer. I believe, and I think a lot of people in this country believe, that there's something that happened there that they don't want to talk about.
Well, I'll give you an example. We're sitting in Connecticut right now. What have you seen for reports on the terrible incident that occurred in Sandy Hook?
That's right. That still hasn't come all the way. In
And
fact,
how
there
long
was
are we?
5 years.
So
They said,
maybe
you're
there's
right.
a bigger question to be asked, which is, it's not always just law enforcement. Like in Sandy Hook, there are judges that are secluding and putting what do they call that? Not allowed to talk areas on reports and things. So whether the law enforcement, I guarantee you one thing: the law enforcement has done their job. When it comes to releasing information,
Okay.
that is not a law enforcement
I got
operation.
it. I got it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that may be part of it, but that was a terrible incident. So there was a lot of enforcement involved in terms of at the time it happened. But it was good for you to remind us that in that crowd of several thousand, that there were people who were not Las Vegas law enforcement people who literally saved lives at the scene.
The military and law enforcement of this country are, the society. I'm very passionate about this, as you know, because everybody would ask, as a young kid, I knew at age 14 what I wanted to do. And this is the difference, which we'll talk about when we get to hiring today,
Right.
is the difference, at least what I see perception-wise, is this was a life calling for us. And we've made the decision in service in the military and service in law enforcement that, you can hate us, you can throw things at us, but if that same person picks up the phone tomorrow, they're going to get the same response as everybody else, because that's how we want to live our lives.
Let's pick that up and use that as a conduit to the discussion about campus riots.
Okay.
Okay.
Its own animal. That's for
Listen,
sure.
on campus, no matter what the campus is, you got campus police.
Yes.
And then you got the local community police, right?
Yes.
One can no longer argue that these things get out of control. There's no question they get out of control. When I look at that thing that happened out there in Berkeley and a couple of other places, that was a full-scale riot. Now, I understand that there are political considerations. So I want you to tell us what goes on inside the mind of the law enforcement operator, that's a law enforcement officer, that's standing there watching these idiots burn down buildings, hurt people and everything else, and they're not moving. They're not moving, Eric. Why is that?
You're not going to make this easy for me, are you?
Why is that?
Well, see, first and foremost is this. Protests in the last, since we can estimate the protest issue has come back to law enforcement since about Occupy in about 2011.
Occupy Wall Street, right.
Well, we had significant issues. For example, Occupy Oakland, a one-day event that cost the city of Oakland over $74 million and had over 470 excessive force allegations that came against departments. The one thing is, we as those handling the management and operation of law enforcement is we have to first focus on the fact that we are a country of law and we are a country of operating under a constitution. And like it, don't like it, the Constitution provides First Amendment application. And our officers understand, because they are very well trained, that the First Amendment in this country, individuals like Westboro Baptist Church, like Black Lives Matter, like 15 for 15, KKK, all of those individuals and their hate speech have to be tolerated as a result of the law. And so is it difficult for the officer sitting on the line? Yes, I'm sure it's very difficult.